be described using a function? If so, identify the independent and dependent variables. You jump from an airplane with a parachute and want to know how far you've traveled at various times on your descent. Yes, that can be described as a function. Time is the independent variable, and how far you've traveled is the dependent variable. So yes, independent is X, it stands for time. Y stands for distance traveled. Number 2, Karen recorded the number of gallons of water used each month in her monthly water bill. Yes, that can definitely be written as a function. This time, Y is the water bill. X is the number of gallons used. So X is the number of gallons used. Her water bill is going to depend on how many number of gallons. So dependent is water bill. And the next one says, just name some real life experiences or situations you can think of that use the concept of functions. What are the independent and dependent variables? And one I just gave you was phone bill. Independent is the number of minutes that you've talked. Dependent would be the price of that phone bill. There's many others. I just gave you that one because it's the first one that I thought of. Directions. Write a short statement that expresses a possible relationship between the variables. And this time they've told me elevation on a mountain and temperature. Well, these are ordered pairs, so the first one is my X, the second one is my Y. So temperature depends on the elevation on a mountain, because the higher you go up, the colder it gets. So that makes sense. Temperature is your independent, is your dependent. It depends on the elevation. Elevation is your independent. So you're going to start with the dependent, and it depends on, and think about it and make a sentence out of it. Let's look at the next one. Hours driving and gas in the tank. So we're going to start with the gas in the tank, the amount of gas in the tank, depends on the number of hours you've been driving. That makes sense. Next page. We've got a graph to look at. It's John's exercise routine. Directions. Identify each of the following. They want me to tell them the independent variable. Well, the independent variable is always shown on the x-axis. So the independent variable is minutes jogged. So minutes jogging. Dependent, it's on the y. It's total calories burned. Dependent is total calories burned. Minimum domain value. What is the smallest value you see for anything on X? Well, this line starts here. Right there, what value does X have? 0. It goes all the way to here. The biggest value for X is 40. What's the minimum Y value? Well, what value does Y have right here? 50. What value does Y have right here? 450. Description of the relationship shown. You're burning 50 calories every 5 minutes. So that'd be 10 calories per minute. You are burning 50 calories every 5 minutes. That would be 10 calories per minute. The last little graph we have to look at, independent is time. Dependent, number of miles from your house. Minimum domain, you find this point and say what value does X have here? 0. Maximum domain, at this point, X is 4. Minimum range, 160. Minimum range, is shown right here. What's the smallest Y value? It's right here. It is 0. What's the maximum range? 160, because that's the biggest Y value we see on this line. Josh was 160 miles from home. It took him 4 hours to get home. This is kind of a weird little graph. He was 160 miles from home. As time went on, he got closer and closer to his house, and here he finally got home.